One of the parts of this assignment that we talked about at the very beginning that you have to have for CP biology is a visual aid. So here I've got my paper pulled up, and I'll show you a couple of ways to put in a visual aid that are going to work for you. If you take a look at the examples that we posted of the types of things we're trying to write, you can see that they all have some sort of chart, maybe a graph over time, photos, a diagram that helps explain important parts of the concept that you're looking at. These are all different options. The important thing about including any visual aid, though, is that it's appropriate for what you're trying to show. Things like, a cartoon or a political comic, a chart, things like that need to match what you're trying to show. If you're trying to demonstrate statistics, probably a chart's going to be your best bet. If you're just trying to illustrate something, maybe images or photos. If you're trying to show how something changes over time, there might be a way to better do that with a graph or maybe even something like a map. But make sure that it matches what you're trying to do. So the first option that I would strongly recommend is using a graph to explain any kind of difficult statistics. If you've never done this before, it makes it really easy in Google Sheets. All you have to do is create a new Google Sheets file in your Google Drive. And the cool thing about this is if you put your information in, Google Sheets is actually smart enough to figure out what type of graph would be best and makes pretty good recommendations. So I've got 3 examples here. If I was talking about different breakdowns in a population by percentage, so I have, if I'm writing a paper about memory, different types of memory that people have, I go up here, I select my data, I go up here to Insert, Chart. There's also a quick button for that right over here if you'd like, Chart. And then you can see because it detected that I was using percentage and that they added up to 100, it was like, hey, a pie chart is probably the best thing to represent this data. So that's what it went ahead and inserted. So right there, I've already got a chart that I can then take over into my regular document. Same thing happens if you do something like this, where you're comparing 2 different numbers. I can go ahead and insert a chart, and it figures, okay, so you have one number and then another number. Probably would be a good idea to compare those using a bar chart. So that's what we have here. And then finally, this one where I have years set up on this side and numbers on this side. Obviously, knowing what you know about math, you can probably figure out what best type of chart to use for something that progresses over time. Google Sheets does the same thing. It figures, okay, you're having something that changes over time. We can graph this as a line graph so that we can really clearly see how that changes. So these are all options that you have. Create a chart, put your information into Google Sheets. If you have questions about that, let me know, but it's a pretty good way to represent your information and make sure that it's understandable to people. However, another option that you might try is to use something like a photograph to illustrate a point. The big thing about this is, like anything else in APA format, you have to include citation information. So that means down in your reference list, you have to include a citation for the image that you use, and it actually has to be marked when you put it in the text too. So the way that APA wants you to do that is you have the photograph that you're going to use, and then underneath it you include the author or creator. Sometimes there's not one direct person. Sometimes it's something like an organization that owns it. You have the year that this was published or created, a description of the image if it has a title or if it's just something that it's being described. And then finally, you need to include licensing information and where it's hosted. This is why you can't just go onto Google Images and search for anything. You need to actually go and find something that you can find this information on. I recommend this website, unsplash.com, because they all have this Creative Commons license. So if I have that pulled up, Unsplash, let's say that I want to include an image of someone taking a test or something like that. I can do a search, and then I know that all of these images are free to be used and reused. Let's say that I like this one so that I can bring that up. I can look at all the information. I can download it to use in my image. I can know exactly, when it was put online. I can know even information about the type of photo that it is, things like that. So this makes it really easy. And of course, we have the person who created the image over here. So let's say that I want to use this one. I'm going to go in here. Because I have to include this little caption on the image, I'm actually not just going to copy and paste it directly into here. I'm actually going to go to Insert, and then I want to add a Google Drawing. The reason for that is we're not going to be able to easily put a caption for the image unless we do it through Google Drawing. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to paste my image in. If it's a large image, it might take it a minute before it pops up. Underneath the image, I'm going to put a text box, And this is where I'm going to put my caption, my attribution for who it's from. So, for example, this one, the information that I found, Quesada J, it's from 2014. Licensed under Creative Commons 0 on unsplash.com. And then I actually was able to even look up and see that this does in fact have a title. It's called Working at Office. So this is all the information that I need to include in order to showcase this image and make sure that it's understandable, that everybody knows where it's from. If I save and close this, it's going to go ahead and insert what I just created into my Google document. And now I'm free to reshape it, resize it, make it into different formats. When you have it selected, under here, you're going to probably want wrap text, which means that all of the writing that you have in here is going to go around that image. So now that I have this in and I have my citation, I've got everything set. All that I need to do is make sure that I include information about the image itself in my reference list. This is the type of information you have to include for something like a photo or an image. If you're just doing a graph that you created, you don't have to include the same citation information. All of that information should be included in your reference list. If you have any questions, again, ask me about them and I'll be happy to help you out. Feel free to pause on the screen to make sure you have all the details.